Hello business owners, this is Ronel from Financially Fit Live. Now if you are attending some of my webinars or doing my online courses, you would know that I spend quite some time on invoicing. The reason for that is that invoicing is critical to your cash management process. Firstly, you want to make sure that the cash flowing into your business come in as quick as possible. And secondly, you also want to make sure that where you are receiving invoices from suppliers or external parties, that those invoices comply with the standard requirements and that you don't end up in a situation where SARS disallows some of your expenses or payments and you end up paying more taxes. So I'm quickly going to take you through the standard requirements that your invoice should comply with, and then you can use that as a checklist for your invoicing process, but also to check the invoices that you are receiving from external parties or suppliers. Enjoy it.
I want to take you through this example of what are the requirements that any invoice should comply with in order for the invoice to be regarded as a valid invoice for tax purposes. Now, first of all, you can include your logo here on top, and then you, as the supplier of the product or the service, should include all your details. So that would be if you have a company, your company name, or if you are a sole proprietor, the name that you are trading in. It is also a good practice to include your registration number. Then you also want to include, or need to include rather, your address, which should be your postal address as well as your physical address, a telephone number, and then a VAT number. But the VAT number you only include if you are registered for VAT. Then it is also good practice to include a contact person name and email address or telephone number of the person who they can contact regarding this invoice. Then what is very important is that the invoice should contain the words tax invoice or VAT invoice. This is, however, only when you are registered for VAT. When you are not registered for VAT, you would only include the word invoice and you won't make any reference to VAT or to tax. Then you also need to include the date when you are issuing the invoice as well as the invoice number. Then if we move down here, you can see here you would include the again a contact person name and email address if you have that, of the recipient of the product or the services that you are selling. And then you would include all the details of the recipient. So that would again be the company or whoever you are selling to, as well as their preferably the physical address, the postal code, and once again the VAT number if this recipient is registered for VAT. So when the both parties are registered for VAT, it is very important to include the VAT number, otherwise you will not be able to claim your VAT. Then if we move down here, you need to include here the date of the supply, so basically when you are delivering the product or the service. You also need to include a detailed description of the service or the product. And here you also need to include the unit price or the hourly rate, and then also the number of units or the number of hours that you are selling. And then obviously your unit price or your hourly rate multiplied by the number of units or hours would give you your total value. So you want to include your total value here. And then when you are registered for VAT, you want to show here separately what the amount of the VAT is that is included in your product or service that you are selling, and you want to specify specifically that it is including VAT and also the rate at which the VAT is included. And then you will basically show the rate or the value before VAT, the portion of the VAT, and then the total amount payable including the VAT. So what is important, if the supplier, you as the company, are not registered for VAT, then you don't want to make any referral to VAT, and also state that the value excludes VAT. So that is important. If you are not registered for VAT, then don't give any indication of VAT here on the invoice. So these are the requirements to comply with for an invoice to be considered a valid invoice for tax purposes, and you can use this as a checklist to look at what your invoicing process looks like and whether it complies, but also to have a look at the invoices that you are receiving from external parties or suppliers. I hope this will help you and that you can make sure that your invoices do comply and that you know that the checklist has been ticked.